great morning sessions. Now I'm very honored and delighted to introduce a dear friend of mine, Dan Linsky, a career police officer in Boston, superintendent of the Boston Police Department. Work together with Dan and the ICP and other, I see him every year at conferences, and someone who has tremendous respect among his cohorts within the law enforcement community. He's with Crowell & Associates, running their Boston office, among other things. But I'd just like to welcome Dan and give him a round of applause, and he's going to talk to us over lunch.
I don't think I need a mic. I usually can project it. I have a hard time hearing me. Just give me one of these, and I'll pick up the tone a little bit. So thank you, Mark, for inviting me to come here today. Thank you for allowing me to share. I'm Dan Linsky. I'm a recovering cop. I've been in recovery for 8 years now. I actually can sit in a restaurant without having my back to the wall, and I actually have conversations with my children as opposed to interrogations or interviews, as we were referring to in the past. So I'm getting there. I work for Crowell. I have a couple of hats that I wear, although I have no hair. I am in the security risk management team. We do physical security, security assessments, security programming, all kinds of security, anything security related, safety related we do. High net worth executive protection we do. Former cops, former federal agents, former prosecutors. We also have an investigations firm as well, where we do a lot of corporate investigations. And I oversee the law enforcement practice worldwide. So we do law enforcement investigation reviews, performance audits, law enforcement training, monitorships of police departments and enforcement agencies. I've worked with DOJ. I was in Ferguson with DOJ right before the Michael Brown verdict came out, trying to help Ferguson, St. Louis County, figure out how they were going to respond to that without causing more damage than had already been done. And then I did a review of what happened in St. Louis and how that day happened and why St. Louis burned, and in some ways why our country burned, and then how do we fix that. I just want to be a cop my entire life. I grew up with Bunch and John, right? It was easy then. It was just good guys versus bad guys. Cops had a couple jobs to do: arrest robbers, rapists, bank robbers, drug dealers, right? Housebreakers. It was easy. There was no terrorism then. Cybersecurity was wrapping a chain around a computer to a desk in a school so someone wouldn't steal it, right? We didn't even know what cyber hacking was back then. Law enforcement was simple back then. And it was just us, the good guys versus the bad guys. Why did I want to be a cop? My best friend's dad was a cop. My dad died young. My best friend's dad gave me a boot behind when I needed it, a pat in the back when I needed it. And I want to be like Jeremiah J. Early, big, strong, strapping Irish Boston cop. I want to be like Jerry. I got to do that at 19. I could seize evidence as alcohol, but I couldn't drink. I graduated Academy April 18th, 1987. Best day of my life. That is my brother. Well, I'd say not my big brother. My brother was not the top of the class. I was. 180 recruits, I was number one. So, not only did I have a good job with a pension, but I was going to be bragging for the rest of my life that my brother wasn't the top of the class, right? I graduated number one. I get to pick where I went, so I went to the most crime-ridden neighborhood of Boston, Roxbury, Massachusetts. Crack was back, or crack had arrived. It was all over the place. Gun violence was through the roof, homicides were through the roof. We were just going up and down. It was called Blue Hill Avenue. We called it Blue Light Avenue. I would go from shooting call to shooting call. It was just violence and destruction. Crack was destroying the neighborhoods. And the community was done with it. They wanted people to do things. And as a young cop, I get to know my beat. I get to know the kids that were on the beat. I did it by the numbers, right? If I had you, I had you. If I didn't have you, I didn't have you. I tried to be respectful. I learned from this police philosopher how to interact with the community in an effective and meaningful manner. And she was an old police expert. She'll kill me today for saying the word old, because she was like 47 at the time, and she was my mother. And her mantra was treat people the way you want to be treated. And that's anything we did in life, she would always say, remember to treat people the way you want to be treated. So I try to do that. One day I see a group of gang kids on a corner. They're all actively involved in gangs. They'll tell you themselves. It was no secret. And they would shoot at their rival gangs, and then the rival gangs would come and shoot at them. And as I looked the block, what caught my attention was a little girl. There was a little girl sitting on the mailbox, swinging her legs, just enjoying a nice summer day in August. And what she didn't realize is the danger she was in. Because the 15 kids that she was hanging out with were actively involved in the Castlegate gang. And I knew the night before the Castlegate gang had shot up the Humboldt gang. And I knew the night before the Humboldt gang had shot up the Castlegate gang. And I'm not a psychic or anything, but usually what would happen is the other gang would come back and try and shoot them up sometime in the near future. So I say, I gotta get that kid out of there. And I get out of my police car and I go over and these kids are hanging on the corner, and I guess constitutionally they can hang on the corner, but I'm a cop. And the community doesn't like 15 gang members hanging on the corner. So I said, hey, Hyos, get out of here, you gotta go. See you later. Come on, move along. And I told them to get off the corner. They could have told me not to, right? But they weren't gonna. They left. They walked across the street. They went around the corner of a building. One of them took a bottle and lobbed it at me. The bottle crashed at my feet. I had enough time on the job as a young cop to realize, okay, if I run across the street, by the time I get there, they're already in that apartment building, through an apartment, up to the roof, out the back door to a second apartment. I'm never going to find them. I'll get a bunch of other cops up here. We'll scream. I'll look like an idiot. But I know who every one of them is. I'm going to find one of them tomorrow. They're going to be drinking a beer or smoking a bone, and they're going to go to jail. And I'm going to say, did you have fun throwing a bottle at me? Who won? Right? I had enough maturity, even as a young cop, to do that. And I said to this young girl, honey, what are you doing here? And she said, oh, I'm visiting from the South, and I came back to visit, and I met my friend here yesterday, and she was really fun, and we played all afternoon, and I was hoping to see her again. But I just know she met me here. I don't know where she lives. I said, listen, do me a favor, this can be a tough neighborhood. You need to go back to your house, okay? You really can't be hanging on this mailbox. And she said, okay, sir. And she skipped away. And I got back in my car. I looked the block 3 times, see if I saw any of my bottle throwers, right, doing anything that I could get them for. That didn't happen. Then I went and I got a Coke 10. I went and I ordered a pizza. And I was one of these weird cops. I didn't go to the police station and sit in the garden and eat the pizza. Like, I would get the pizza and then go to my patrol sector and eat the pizza, because none of the crooks ever came into the guard to do crime. So I couldn't catch them if I was in the garden, but I could catch them if I was in my sector. The pizza came out, and I was pretty hungry, so I started taking a slice of it as I'm driving back to my sector, and the call comes in for a person shot at Ruth and Humboldt Avenue. I said, oh no, don't let that be. And I got back to that same corner, and what happened when I went to order my pizza, the Humboldt gang returned. Tiffany Moore returned. She sat back on the mailbox, and she was swinging her legs, enjoying that whole night, waiting for her friend so she could play. The Castlegate gang came back. They saw their rivals, and they shot it up. And they, of course, missed, and they shot Tiffany in the head off. When we got back to that station, I watched the 11-year-old girl die. I failed her. I knew she was in danger. I tried to help her, and I failed. And that stuck with me for a long time. I saw Tiffany's image often, and I tried to put that away. But our community was outraged. The community said they had enough. They wanted something done, and they wanted something done now. Well, who does the doing? We do. I went to roll call the next day, and the superintendent in charge of our district got up in front of roll call along with the number 2 in the police department and said, we're not going to accept what happened here last night. That's unacceptable. This doesn't happen. Kids don't get shot in our city. And my boss, superintendent of our district, said, go get them. Go get them. We didn't know who the hell they were. I guess they were someone in the community, right? The kids up there, we knew the gangs involved. We didn't know who exactly did the shooting, but they wanted us to go get them. And they brought a bunch of cops from other areas to help us go get them. And they were gone. They were gone. We went up there, and if you had a warrant outstanding for your arrest, you were gone. If it was a paperwork error, didn't matter, you were gone. If you were driving a car without a license, you were gone. You were driving a car with a broken taillight, gone. You trespassed, gone. So we arrested everyone we could get. And every day, how many we get? And we count the numbers of people we get. We got this, we got that, we got this. And we got some guns, we got some drugs, we got some dope. But we didn't get the guys responsible for the homicide. Because they knew we were coming. They knew we were coming strong, so they put their heads down and hit. But we got Ed, the electrician, who's trying to make his, mortgage payments and maybe get his kids into a private school because he doesn't think Boston Public Schools and get his education he wants. And he didn't have time to fix his taillight and go to the registry of motor vehicles. But we got him. We got him. Yep. And he was a stat. And our bosses were measuring stats every day. And what we did is we didn't police that neighborhood. We occupied it. And we destroyed their faith in us. Why would Ed the electrician tell me what was going on in the neighborhood when I just arrested him and made him stay a night in jail, towed his car and cost him $500? Especially when he's in a neighborhood where fear is real. And helping the police can get you hurt. Yeah, we got some people. We got some people. With Kroll, I now do a lot of expert witness work, and I use this as education, but that's actually one of my cases. That police officer went to jail. I testified against him in excessive force case where he broke this kid's skull by slamming against the wall for no reason. I think police officers are mostly moral. I think police officers do the best they can with what they have. And I think they go out every day, most of them, to make a difference. But we're not perfect, just like society is not perfect. Have we got room to go? We absolutely do. We've come a long way. I'll put law enforcement up against some other institutions. Our efforts in diversity and inclusion, I'll put us up against most Fortune 500 boardrooms. I'll put us up against some colleges and universities, professor staff, as far as getting people of color, language diversity, LGBTQ plus into our ranks. We got work to go, but the rest of society has work to go too. So I wind up over at Harvard University. I got set up. A professor from Northeastern University asked me to come speak to the entire Harvard University Law School. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And I should have known when I got the packet on the documents that go down to the class. There were 86 pages of how bad police were and how bad the Boston police were and how corrupt police were. And there was 3 pages on the 3 positive things the Boston police have done in a couple hundred years for our policing existence, right? So I get up and I give a presentation and I talk about the Tiffany Moore case. I talk about how I was in that neighborhood trying to do the right thing. And I could have went to any other neighborhood. I could have made more money in other neighborhoods where there was less crime and violence. I was there because I actually cared and wanted to help. Because I wanted to stop the violence. And I told that story about Tiffany Moore. And to me, the story as well. A young cop who cared about the community who tried to save a young girl's life has guilt and remorse because he didn't do it, because he cares about the community. I'm hoping that's a little bit of the story you got here today when I share that story. And this Harvard law student came up to me and said, "What gives you a right to throw those kids off the corner?" I was trying to keep the little girl from getting killed. Yeah, but you had no right. And you were abusing their rights and you threw the Constitution away. You know what? That's what the community was asking me to do. You didn't want 15 dead kids down in the corner. They were happy if I told them to go in the corner. In fact, they'd call 911 often and say, "Hey, the gang of kids are around the corner. Can you do something about it?" Was it Dan Linsky profiling those kids? Or was it the community profiling those kids? And those kids were actively gang involved. And they would tell you. They would actively tell you. And he screamed and yelled at me. And I said, "Geez, we just see it a different way. We see it a different way." I retired from the PD, and this happened. And the purpose of my conversation is, how did we get to where our country burned? Where a 19-year-old kid joins the police department along with a lot of other good folks to do the right thing. And I think I'm doing the right thing most days. I've had a couple bad days in my office, I'm sure we all have. But how did that dedication to help against the bad guys, how did that get lost? How did all of that go away in the last couple of years? How is it that police are now the problem of all societies, or at least they were a year ago. I think that pendulum's coming back. But while I was off in Crowell, this happened at the same corner where Tiffany was killed. This is John Monahan. He's a Boston police officer. They pulled over this car because it was.
The car was occupied by two other individuals. You'll see on the video now at 6:47:34, the two other individuals are being escorted out of the car. Doors being opened. At 6:47:35, Officer John Moynihan begins to open the front driver's side door of the vehicle. No officers at this point have weapons drawn, no hands on the weapons. Right here at 6:47:37, Angela West shoots Officer John Moynihan in the face from close range. At 6:47:41, Mr. West appears to raise the firearm again. All 6 shots from his revolver were fired, expended from that weapon.
So John Monahan goes up to the car. The reason they were stopping the car, we have ShotSpotter in the city of Boston. There had been shots fired, but 15 rounds were fired during an incident. These kids aren't rocket scientists, thank God. So whenever we have a ShotSpotter incident, we go to our probation GPS tracking to see if anyone with a probation GPS tracker on their ankle was in the middle of the shooting. And lo and behold, Angela West was there. His probation officer wanted him taken into custody for being present where a crime occurred and not reporting it to see what he knew about it. They waited for him. They pulled his car over. When John went up to open the door, Angela West took out a gun, stuck in his face, shot him in the face. Is that what we expect our police officers to deal with? Is that the police officers returned fire, Angela West was killed? Is that fair? Not fair? I don't know. But the police officer shot in the face. This is William Grass. He preceded me as the chief of the Boston Police Department. He's from the neighborhood. We were told if we started to get more diversity in our police departments, it would help. And I believe that wholeheartedly. We were told if we got more diversity up the ranks of the police department, it would help. And I believe that wholeheartedly. Willie Grass is there. He goes over to address the crowd. And a young Harvard lawyer starts screaming at him, Why did you do this? Why did you do this? He said, well, the officer opened the car door, came out of the car, he shot the officer in point-blank range in the face. He started shooting other officers, they returned fire. Well, why'd you have to do that? Aren't you trained? Why didn't you do something else? The same Harvard lawyer who attacked me couldn't understand why this was an acceptable use of force. He was screaming and yelling at the chief of the Boston Police Department. Because it's us versus them. And them isn't any community, any nationality, any group. It's cops versus the bad guys. And unfortunately, who are the bad guys? Well, it's people doing crime. But it can evolve into more than just people doing crime. And when that's the attitude between the cops, and that's the attitude between the community, when it's us versus them, we all lose. Every one of us loses when it's us versus them. This isn't the individual, but I'm a young cop. I'm working narcotics, and I go to the Boston Common, and I go to buy dope, so I take my radio off, and I take my gun off, and I take my badge off. I got my standard issue dope buying crack pipe, because you weren't a good young cover cop if you didn't have a crack pipe. Because the legal scholars in Boston would say, are you a cop? You gonna tell me? Well, the case gets thrown out of court. Oh, yeah, I'm a cop. Yeah, absolutely. You beat me. I can't buy dope off you. So I would say, a cop? I got my crack pipe. As I'm walking in to go buy crack in the Common, because that's where the community complaints were coming from, go to the common and buy crack. A man dressed similar to this wrapped in a blanket. It was February. It was 4 degrees outside. It was freezing cold. I knew him. I had arrested him a number of times. His name, affectionately from the squad, was Stinky. And we used to fight over who you had to transport him to the station because of the body odor and the smell that would be in the back of the police car. Stinky was there. He was in the middle smoking crack. He was high as a kite smoking crack. And he sees me. And hey, I got to talk to you. Come over here. I said, no, I'm good, buddy. I'm good. I'm all set. No, I'm good. I figured he was going to pull my cover. He was going to say, this guy's a cop. Don't tell him anything. He's like, no, you got to talk. We got to talk. I go, no, I'm good. Get away from me. And Stinky dropped his crack pipe. And he ran out of the common. And the crack dealer was there. I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? He's like, you a cop? I got my crack pipe. I'm not a cop. He's like, all right, come on over here with me. Come on over here with me. He started walking around the common. He's looking all around. He's trying to get me further away from the crowd. And now I see my backup team. I got 4 guys in my crew, and they're coming 4 different directions, and they're coming hard. There's something serious going on with them, but I haven't made the buy yet. And for the undercover to not make the buy, like, that just ruins the entire day, right? It's all about getting the dope. And all of a sudden, my guys take their guns out and put the drug dealer down on the gunpoint. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? We got nothing. This kid didn't sell any yet. They grab him, they pat his waistband, and they recover the firearm from the waistband. Stinky, the homeless guy who lives in the Boston Common, who was in the middle of smoking his crack pipe on a freezing cold night, saw me, ran across the street and used a payphone, called 911, and said, the guy that Detective Linsky's buying dope off of has got a gun, he's going to rob him. Might have saved my life. So we paid for information, right? And, getting the gun off the street, that was like $150. So my boss authorized the payment for Stinky. So I go to Kevin Purvis, which is his name. I say, Kevin, I appreciate what you did. Listen, here's $150. I really appreciate what you did. You didn't have to do that. I appreciate it. He said, I'm not taking the money. I said, Kevin, dude, it's $150. You smoke crack for a living. I'm going to leave now because my shift's over. I'm assuming you're going to probably go take that money and buy crack. Or, Kevin, the Elm Hotel, $10 a night. You can be warm. You can be warm for 15 days. You can get a 2-week room rental. Why don't you get off the street, Kevin? Just hold on. Linsky, I didn't do that. Don't mind. I said, okay. What'd you do it for? Do you remember the time you arrested me the last time? I said, yeah. She said, remember what happened on the booking desk? I didn't really remember. No. She says, I do. I've been out hanging around, smoking up. I was like on a 2-day bender. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I was starving. I had to clear up my warrant. You guys took me in. I got to the booking desk. And I said to the booking officer, do you have anything to eat? He said, fuck you, buddy. You're too late. I didn't hear the booking officer say that. I didn't care about that. Because Kevin was definitely in a hard way. And I did what Kay Linsky taught me to do. And I had already gone out and bought a steak and cheese sandwich and a soda and a bag of chips for Kevin. And I took him out of the cell, and I sat him down, and I had a sandwich with him, and soda and chips with him. I talked about my father, who was an alcoholic, who got into recovery and turned his life around and saved his family. I talked about family members that I have that are struggling with drug addiction. Some of whom gotten over it, some of whom are still struggling today. And I said, there's things you can do, Kevin. It's never too late to turn the life around. He says, you're the only cop who's ever treated me like a human being. And I didn't want to see you get hurt. That's how we're going to get information from people from the community. Relationships. Treating people with respect and dignity. Putting the principles in play that everyone's been talking about here today. That's the type of thing that can help turn this boat around. In policing, people ask all the time, is it about racism? They ask you, are police officers racist? Nobody in this room has an opinion on that?
So,
No?
are they racist? Is that the question? What'd you say?
Are police officers racist?
Some of them.
Sure they are.
Yeah,
Yep.
just like some of the rest of the population.
Absolutely. We're made up from human beings from society. Society has racism issues. Police have racism issues. Are all cops racist? African American female, 2 African American males, Cuban male, Puerto Rican male, 3 white guys. That was my squad. All of those people of color grew up in that neighborhood that we worked in. Do we go out and target them because of the color of the skin? Or we target them because that's where our information was? Well, that's where the calls for 911 were coming. Well, that's where the community groups were begging for us to go take off the crack house and do things. Yeah. Are there racist cops? Sure. Is racism in play in policing? Absolutely. Is every cop going down the road looking for people based on the color of their skin? I don't find that to be the way it is. Is it classism? I'm the chief of the Boston Police Department. I run a CompStat process where I look at crime and I want problem-solving solutions to my crime problem. And I run a two-week meeting and I got my numbers up. And in the South Boston project, I keep having the most majority of crime in the Oak Colony County. Every place else in the community is quiet. There's no crime. And I asked the captain, what's going on up there? Oh, yeah, well, crime, it's a project, and we're trying to work on it, and this and that and everything. I said, we have a walking officer up there, and we have one cop who knows that development, can talk to people, build relationships, and find out who's doing what there. Yep, we got a walking officer, he's there all the time, they love him, it's great. Okay, so the time he came to me the next 2 weeks, crime had gotten even worse. I said, Captain, what's the walking officer doing up there? Do you have his results? How many arrests? How many citations? How many community meetings has he held? What positive things is he doing there? Is he doing anything to interact with kids? What are we doing there that's showing up the flag and trying to deal with this violence issue? Oh, yeah, he's there all the time. They love him. Yeah, it's great. We're good. All set. This is the one-time blip boss. We're there. So I drive my cruiser to the Old Colony Housing Development on a Wednesday afternoon. Yankee Charlie 2 can have the Fox Charlie 1 meet me at the Old Colony Housing Development. I brought the captain up. He's looking at me like I got 2 heads. Boss, what's going on? Kevin, I want to walk around here. I want to find out what's going on. I want to see what the community sees and see if we can figure out what the problem is and see if there's other, do they need more resources? Do they need more cops? Do they need change in architecture, cameras? What are we going to do here? He says, oh yeah, boss. And we walked around and I started talking to people on their porches. Hey, sir, how often do you see the walking officer? Walking officer? Haven't seen a walking officer in here. Jack McGill used to be the walking officer here back in 10 years ago. He was great. He'd take 2 kids, smack their heads together, one go to the Marine Corps, one go to the Navy, prevent him from going to the criminal justice system. I love Jack McGill. We need Jack McGill. Ever see a cop? No. Know the cop's name? No. Ever see a cop walking? No. No. So after the 8th person, I realized I had a different problem. I had a captain who, just like the colonel was saying, there was a lack of leadership. So I'm standing next to my police car in front of 7 Birch Street on Park. And I say to the captain, Captain, can you tell me why none of these folks have seen your walking officer who's been assigned here for 3 years and don't know his name? This is a 10 by 10 block area. How is it the cop is not known? I'm not seeing. He looked at me and said, Chief, you're fucking project people. And I went, oh, project people. So project people can't see police officers in uniform? What do you mean? Like, they blend in the bricks? What do you mean by project people? He says, Chief, they're project people. I went, oh, okay. And the reason I parked on the 7 Birch Street was because after I met with the captain, I was going to visit a father-in-law who lives on the 3rd floor of 7 Birch Street, where my wife and her 4 brothers grew up, where they all got themselves into college, those project people. And my father-in-law refused to leave, because that's where he grew up. He wanted to stay there, even though we had the means to move him someplace else. This was his community. I said to the captain, I think I understand our problem, and I have a solution. We usually transfer people on Fridays. He was transferred that Wednesday afternoon. I sent out paper clips of the evidence management unit. He sent them indicted for other crimes. I put a captain there, and I said, pick 2 kids, any kids you want in the Boston Police Department. You put them in that development. You tell them to get to know people. You tell them to address crime. You tell them to fix it. And if they have results in 6 months, they can go to any unit. Police officer can go to and say, oh, 6 months later, crime is down to 75%. One of them wanted to go to the gang unit. One of them said, I like what I'm doing here. Can I stay and pick my partner? That's how we're going to go outside and create community. That's how we're going to solve crime. We can't solve crimes with just police attitude and police ideas and police thoughts. We need the whole community involved in that process. And we have to be open to having that conversation. I told you that my squad wasn't responsible for racial profiling in Roxbury, right? But was the system a little bit? Because we had these programs called Weed and Seed that dumped millions of dollars in communities across the country. And my guys could do overtime any amount they wanted, any day they wanted, as long as we were in the Weed and Seed when we got the Weed and Seed grant. Do you know what the Weed and Seed grant boundaries were? In our communities of color. So where would we do our overtime? In the communities of color. So did we have a disparate impact on communities of color with our drug enforcement strategy? Yeah. Was it financially based? Absolutely. Did I realize at the time that we were out of the problem? No. In that, we arrest a kid. I don't know, I think he had 8 ounces of crack cocaine. He was looking at 40 years in prison because he was a second and third offender. He was an African American kid. We flipped him. He gave us a supplier. I got a white male who lived in Quincy, Massachusetts. I got him with a kilo of cocaine and 40 pounds of weed. I did trick him. I went to the booking desk and told him that that African American officer he was selling to was a leader of a gang, and that he was going to probably kill him and rob him if we hadn't intercepted and arrested him, so he could thank us for him not getting shot by the gang member that he was about to sell cocaine to. He said, "Oh my God, thank you for saving me." And I said, "Why don't you give me your supply?" And he brought me, and I got 16 kilos of powdered cocaine. And I thought we did a good job. And we went to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I said, "Look, I got the guy who was supplying Olive Grove Hall with powders of cocaine. We got him. We're going to indict him, right? We're going to judge him." Yeah, it's powdered cocaine. No, we'll just take that to state court. Because the law had come out that crack cocaine, which was cocaine base, which was designed for the Colombian labs in Colombia, was going to be prosecuted more seriously. But what we wound up doing was prosecuting kids of color for having 8 ounces of cocaine. And the supplier who had 16 kilos, the U.S. Attorney's Office said, "We don't have time for that prosecution." So our system was straining our community, was causing the tension. Underneath, the good intention police were doing, we had systems that weren't working for our community, especially our most impacted community. The community of color, where we're disparately arresting and prosecuting people, is the place where they need police the most. It's where the most violence occurs. We've got to work on solutions to do it. We got to get away from good versus bad and us versus them. Tamir Rice, New York, Freddie Gray, us versus them. Ramos and Lou, these cops, killed doing the job, us versus them. How did this happen? How could that happen? That wouldn't have happened if Dan Linsky was there. I wouldn't have allowed it. I'll tell you that right now. I would have just grabbed him by the collar of his neck and said, "Get off." I'm a much better cop and detective, having been chief of police. I will tell you, those 2 young cops who were with him, I'm a pretty strong personality. I'm pretty outspoken. I probably wouldn't have done anything either. 2 rookie cops who were in the middle of a call with adrenaline, cortisol going through their brain, looking for the officer with time on the job. I probably wouldn't have tapped them on the shoulder and said, "Get off." That's a challenge. We have to figure out how we empower those cops to do that. How do we get them to be active bystanders and not somebody who lets somebody get away with something that's morally wrong, even though you have a perceived presence that this person must know what they're doing. Us versus them. A 4-year-old kid was shot in the park. My cops responded in there. They grabbed the child, put pressure on his belly. The doctor said that those cops saved that 4-year-old kid. There had to be 300 people in the park that day. And when my cops said to him, "Okay, you were playing with the kids in the park. You were there with your children. You were there with your neighbors. And somebody shot a 4-year-old kid. Who did it?" I'm not telling you. Nothing. They didn't say a word. They didn't want to help out. Why? One, maybe they've been abused. They had the electrician and didn't feel like helping the police out. 2, I live 4 miles from that park. In my neighborhood, someone gets shot. There's going to be 40 witnesses. Because it's cops, it's firefighters, it's teachers, it's nurses, people who feel comfortable with the system. In that neighborhood, this gang's fighting with that gang. My kids are by myself with me. We don't deal with either one of them. They let us go about our business. Why am I going to inject myself and be the target of some violence for that? And I think our officers sometimes discount that fear and don't understand why people won't cooperate. Why people won't cooperate. So, I did what we did during Tiffany Moore. I got all my motorcycle units and I had them flood the neighborhood. And I got all my detectives and I said, we're going to knock on doors. And instead of arresting every electrician, my motorcycles, when they pull people over, said, hey, you got a broken taillight. That's a $60 fine. Here's a text pamphlet. Didn't know any information about the 4-year-old that was killed in the park. So instead of getting a citation, you were getting a chance to help us change crime in the neighborhood. And as I was knocking on doors, I said, old woman, you should kill me. I was 56. She says, you're Linsky, right? And I said, yeah. She said, you're a bigwig now. I see you on TV. I said, yeah. Tell my wife. Doesn't work at home. And she says, yeah, I used to live it. And she gave me your address. And I called you about those kids that were selling cocaine next to my house. And they were urinating. And no one listened to me. I called you. The next day, you went in there and stopped it. You got them evicted. I want to thank you for that. I'm like, oh, absolutely, thank you. She said, you know who shot the kid in the park, right? It was Scooter from Franklin Hill. And I'm like, I hadn't heard that. Yeah, it was him. He was shooting out with another kid's sticks. And she gave me the whole thing. And my detectives, who had relationships with people, were getting the same information from people that they had relationships with. And we got the case. We could never make the shooting because no witnesses would come forward to testify in the shooting. But Scooter sells dope. I sent all my undercovers after him, all our informants after him. He sold them dope. We bought enough dope to put him in federal prison for 15 years. Probably more time than we would have got this shoot. But we did it because the community gave us the information. Because of relationships. Because of one-on-ones. October 28, 1991, I responded to a call from 2 officers down. They were our bomb technicians. They were examining a device that was under a car. It exploded. One of the officers lost his eye. And when I got to the scene, the other officer was screaming that there are secondary devices. Leave me, there are secondary devices. We didn't leave him. We picked up the pieces. His leg was pretty much blown off. His wrist was about 15 feet away from his body. We picked up the pieces and tried to stop the bleeding in that officer. And we rushed him to the Boston Women's Hospital. And I'll never forget the look on my wife's eyes when the ambulance door opened. Because my wife was a ER nurse, and I knew if anyone could save this cop, my wife and her doctors could save this cop. And they tried their best. And after 6 hours, that cop died. That cop was my best friend's dad, Jeremiah J. Hurley. He's the reason I became a cop. He's been a badge on my chest when I graduated from police academy. I know what happens to us versus that. It's personal. So, I found myself at the Boston Marathon faced with the biggest challenge of my life. We had a nice quiet day. Things were going well. And then we get hit. Nope. Is it not going to play the video for me? Sorry about that. How many things do we have open? Oh, God. Jesus Christ. Oh, this is what I want. This is our radio transmissions coupled with the video from the marathon finish line. Anyone hear what they said? 800 cops clicking their radio, cutting each other off. This is me. I'm going to come in and tell him, Danny, you're not coming in. Civilian dispatcher. Chief, get the squads down here. I need bikes. I need everything. Civilian dispatcher's going to tell everyone to shut up. I just want to hear from their boss. Secondary devices here. Tell the officers there are secondary devices here. You notice there's backpacks all around the ground. All potential other devices. I was at Fenway Park. Lead runners had come in. Governor put laurel wreaths on their heads, played the national anthem, and then I thought we were done. I thought the terrorists would hit us when those lead runners came in, but they did. So I was at Fenway Park when Dan Keeler was screaming on the radio, and I knew my friend had a problem on Boylston Street. I just didn't know exactly what he had. I got in the car. I got there as quickly as I could. Dan Keeler was telling people to keep those lanes open, and by doing so, there are dozens of people alive today because we were able to get them out of there as quickly as possible. And I got out of my car, and the person who was driving me took it off to the right because I wasn't going to block that street. Keeler told me I need to keep it open for him. And Dan Keeler, my buddy, former United States Marine, says, Chief, they blew a device. As people run away, they blew a second device. And he stopped talking. He stopped giving orders on the radio. And he essentially said, Tag, you heard that? I didn't like being hit when I was a kid, and I surely didn't want to be hit this day. And he looked at me because I had 5 stars on my shoulders. And he stopped talking. And weirdly, he had told me they hit us twice, boss. I'm standing in front of an 8-year-old little boy. I feel for him, woman. I've been a cop a long time. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of bad days in the office. They annihilated this baby. They destroyed him. They destroyed him on the street in my city. Well, he was under my care, on my watch. And I failed another child. In a wave of shame and guilt rolled over me that I missed that bag when I walked that street early that day. And I froze. And somebody screamed about a secondary device. And I wanted to go home to my kids. And I needed to get out of there. And I'm trying to figure out how to go. I'm trying to figure out how I can leave. I can't leave. And I'm pacing back and forth as I walk the walkie-talkie and the radio. And I should appear. This room appeared. The foot pretty badly mangled, and I just, ladies, need help! I grabbed your foot, and I took a napkin off the table for the restaurant, and started putting pressure on it. I know how to do first aid. I was a cuffs. I've been doing first aid since I was 12. I got your leg up. We don't want you to know it's shock. You're gonna be okay. And a firefighter medic came over and said, Chief, we got it. And they started wrapping an actual pressure dressing on your leg. And they had it. I wouldn't let go of the fire. Chief, we got it. No, you got it. But I'm gonna hold the foot up. I'm gonna keep him going in shock. Because if I'm not doing this, people want me to do something about that. And I don't have a solution for that. I'll look at that baby. He's breathing so fast. And I got to go. And a Massachusetts state trooper came over to me and grabbed me by the collar of my jacket and pulled me and said, Chief, we need you in another station. I don't know if you guys know, the colonel's gone. I don't know about relationships between local PD and state police, but Mark, can you imagine if some state trooper grabbed you by the jacket and told you he needed the number 2 NCIS in the middle of the street to do his job? Get off of me! He said, Daniel just, I said, Mark, I know exactly what you just, Mark, I know exactly what you just, you want second, Mark? You want goddamn second! You know, my file cabinet. I didn't realize it at the time, but when you take those deep breaths that your mother always told you, right? Treat people the way you want to be treated, take some deep breaths. Moms have some pretty wise knowledge. Those deep breaths will get that cortisol and adrenaline out of your amygdala. And biologically, once that's going, you can open your file cabinet. I have trained for terrorist bombing attacks. I have trained for active shooter attacks. I have seen great leaders in crisis. All those files were there. I've also seen idiots that I was never going to do what that person did. It was there. Pulled out a file. Such a situation. Dad. Define it. Looks like a bombing, dead people, that's crime. Usually I have detectives do detective stuff when this happens. Okay, that's a good thought, Dan. And this is the self-talk that's going on in my head. Is that Kevin Buckley? He's your head of detectives. Yes, it is. You should tell Kevin Buckley to do something. Kevin, I want investigative command post at Ring Road in Huntington. I want Mass Ave to Newbury Street locked down. I want Huntington to Arlington Street locked down. Lock this scene down and start pulling video. Boom. I don't have to tell Kevin Buckley what to do. He knows how to do investigations. I just had to give him permission to do it. The video that makes this case, we had it in 25 minutes. It took us 2 days to interpret the data. We had the video physically in custody in 25 minutes. One of my deputies comes up to me, Chief, no ambulances! We get no ambulances! I need ambulances! We had learned in our training that we weren't going to have enough ambulances. And we had prepared to put people in police vehicles to take to the hospital. I said, Colin, there's 10 wagons in this plan. I want 3 patients in the back of each wagon. I want them with a medic. Get them off the street now, go. Boom. Colin Lyden, you're going to hear him on the radio do just that. People actually think I know what the hell I'm doing here. And that's what I remember a class where Israeli general talked about when it all goes to hell and you have 5,000 things to do in crisis, pick the 5 most important right now and tell your troops what you need to do. But more important than what you tell your troops to do is the manner and method in which you tell them. Because if you're screaming and yelling incoherent on the radio, guess what? There's no trust in the plan. You better be the calmest and coolest you've ever been. You better write that script. And as soon as you click that mic, you better be like steel. That's what I try to do. You be the judge.
EOG assets we're going to set up at 981 Boylston at the firehouse. So any outside EOG assets, any outside command, we're going to set up at the firehouse. We know that's a secure location. We're going to get the victims out. We're then going to conduct a sweep with EOG assets to make sure there are no other devices on the street. We will then get people out of the restaurants and bars. I need somebody up there to get on social media and let people know what we're doing here, that we're sweeping the street to make sure it's safe first, and then we'll get them out of the bars and stuff once we get it swept.
Oh, I'm in the wrong PowerPoint now. Hold on. Go back to the original. So, my cops ran toward those bombs. My cops saved a lot of lives. We had a community who stood with us and helped us. The community saved a lot of lives. 102 hours later, I wind up in a car chase with the Zanaya brothers over in Watertown. They just murdered an MIT police officer, carjacked an individual, and it was a pretty intense car chase, and a pretty intense gun battle. And one of our cops was shot, and there was nothing I could do to help him. They were trying to save his life, and there's nothing else I could do. But Tamlin Zanayas had been shot. Tamlin had been shot by Jeff Luisi from Watertown Police. He'd been murdered by his brother. We got in the vehicle, took off, turned around, and drove. We don't know if he was trying to kill him, so he wouldn't get captured, or if he was trying to kill the police officer. The police officer rolled out. Tamlin got dragged about 5 feet down the street, and the car cut off down the way. He's a former professional boxer. He was in incredible shape. He was shot. He still fighting. He was resisting being shot. He deployed 5 bombs against the team that night. 3 of which exploded, 2 of which did not explode, and they were within 5 to 10 feet of where he was rolling around on the cops on the ground. I know on Marathon Day, he used remote detonation to detonate those bombs and kill those people. I was prepared for a suicide bomb vest. I was prepared for remote detonation, and I had a solution to that problem. I ran up to Tamlin Zanayas as he fought with my gang officer and Jeff Luisi. I put my Glock 40 caliber handgun to his temple, and I started to rip his clothes off. And all I had to do was to see the suicide bomb vest, or see a phone, or a clicker, or a garage door. You need to remote detonate the 2 bombs that were within 5 feet, and I was going to kill him. Because of what he made me see on Marathon Day, I wanted to kill him. He had nothing on him that could hurt us. Without any thinking, any planning, my Glock 40 went into my holster. I grabbed a radio and I called for an ambulance. And I knelt down and I did first aid on a terrorist who murdered an 8-year-old boy, 2 beautiful young women, who maimed 254 of my citizens, who just executed a cop and just tried to kill me and my police officers in the gun battle. I did first aid on him. Because my mother told me that's what I'm supposed to do. My department told me that's what I'm supposed to do. My God told me that's what I'm supposed to do. And that's what I did. I did tell him as he was being put in the ambulance, face up. I looked right in his eyes and told him he was going to burn in hell for what he did to that little boy. And I'm pretty confident that's come true today after he died at the hospital. So now, how do we get it back? Our country burned. We realized there were huge challenges with law enforcement, huge concerns, huge issues. Law enforcement's been trying to catch up and try and do the right thing and come back. And I think every cop in America, if they had their way, would ban the iPhone. Right? The iPhone has changed policing in America. In some ways for the bad, in some ways for the good, right? Transparency. The only problem is there's no editor on Twitter, right? Stuff gets out there that isn't true and becomes a narrative. What do we want our cops to do? I'm going to open this up for conversation. I got 5 minutes. We'll be playing here, but so mental health is a big issue, right? We have a mental health agency that's on the streets dealing with people who are going to jump off bridges, dealing with people who are naked on the side of the road, dealing with people who are homeless and hungry. Do we have any resources to do that? Or when the homeless guy's in front of your store, who does Starbucks call? 911. And the police respond. Can we supplement that resource? We did in Boston. We actually put counselors and medical professionals with police officers, and we called it our street outreach team, and they reached out, and instead of just responding to 911 and throwing the drunk away from Starbucks, we tried to do casework and see if we couldn't get them some housing, mental health, medicine, put them in touch with their family. How could we help them? So we didn't spend $1 million like $1 Million Murray work. We actually try and deal with the problem that's before us. That's something we did. Something we did long before 2020. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't everywhere. Demilitarization. I mean, we all agree we got to demilitarize, right? Let's just put that on the table, right? Absolutely. Cops should not be militarized. I agree. I was in St. Louis. That was not an MRAP from the military. It It was the Lenko Bearcat that was purchased for law enforcement purposes. But I agree with you, cops should not be militarized. Did anyone see the sniper on the Bearcat in St. Louis pointing the rifle at the peaceful protesters? Were you outraged by that? I was outraged by that. And then I found out why. I said, gee, why the hell would you have a sniper on a Bearcat pointing a rifle at a crowd? He said we had an undercover FBI agent in the crowd, and the people who were closest to Michael Brown's family, there was an individual who took a 9mm out and said, I'm going to shoot these. So in some kind of words, and he had it at the low ready. And the undercover didn't have a weapon and couldn't go over and say anything because he would have been mauled in a riot. He called in and said, hey, kid in the green shirt's got a 9mm at the low ready. Says he's going to step button some rounds go. What's the solution? Do the police rush the crowd? Where the peaceful protesters are thousands in front of this kid who is intent on violence? No. So someone says, get up there and blast him. If he stops shooting, maybe we can end it quickly. Well, okay. I guess that's a solution to the problem. We never heard that narrative, though, right? It was just the sniper was pointing away because it was already too far gone. And police will always give you a hard time when you talk about St. Louis and what happened there, and hands up, don't shoot, never happened, right? Doesn't matter. It was going to burn. That's what was happening there for decades before. They were policing for dollars. They weren't policing their community. They were occupying it like we were doing in Boston. But I'm all for demilitarization. I just want my cops to be able to do their job. Like, say a kid with a rifle with an EOTech sight with 400 rounds of ammunition goes into a school in Texas, and he starts shooting where he's got a distance where he can kill people from 500 yards. I don't want them militarized. I just want my cops to not be able to get shot. So maybe they need to have a Lincoln Bearcat. Maybe they need to have rifles. Maybe they need to have bulletproof vests that stop rifle rounds. And maybe we need to train them to go through the door. In Uvalde, Texas, I'd have gone through that door. I wouldn't have waited in the hall because I've trained myself to go through that door. We give cops training in the academy, and then we do 40 hours of mandatory every year. And of the 40 hours of mandatory training, we probably take 30 of it for required classes that have to be taken, many of which I support and agree with. But we don't have cops in that amygdala hijack, in that stress situation of being on Boylston Street, so they can respond the way they're going to have to. If you look at situations around the country, I can tell you from the video, cops are in cold light because we don't invest resources in the training. We don't need to defund police. We need to reinvest in police. Support them with other resources, put them around it, but we want to train them for that bad day. But we also want to train them, hey guys, we got a teenager selling weed, we don't need a SWAT team. We'll wait for him to come out of the house, and the detectives can grab him if we think that's an issue, if that state still has a marijuana law they want to enforce, right? But we don't need to be doing SWAT just because we have the tools. Everything becomes a nail if you got a hammer. So we've got to be reasonable. No-knock search warrants? I've been there, we kill people. No-knock search warrants should be an act of Congress to do. I agree 100%. So there's definitely reforms we can do. We need a balance of both, right? We all wanted those cops through the door in Uvalde, but we don't want militarized cops either. Community engagement. I deployed a new tactical piece of equipment in the streets of Boston. I deployed an ice cream truck. President Obama thought it was a great thing. He put it in 21st century policing as a great thing to do. And it was great. Our cops get to meet kids who wouldn't necessarily talk to us, right? It's good community policing. Then we did coffee with the cops. Hey, let's take a picture. Let's do selfies, coffee with the cops. That made me feel good. It made the community feel good. I went to Austin PD to help them with police reform. And I went out to the community and started saying, well, do they do coffee with the cops? And this community member said, dude, why would I go to coffee with the cops? I don't trust them and respect them. You're only getting input from people who show up to have coffee with cops. You're not hearing from my neighbors who aren't going to show up to have coffee with cops. And as a result, you don't hear the whole picture. And I went, huh. You're so right. We are missing. How do we get it? We got to train officers to the job we do. I train cops how to deal with bad guys, right? They blade their body. They keep their gun side away. I'm assessing whether I'm going to make a move, right? I'm going to be they can talk to bad guys all day. I sent one of my cops to a community meeting. He was in his sector, and I said, hey, Mission Hill's having a community meeting on some of the issues up there. I need you to go to the meeting and cover it for me. I'm going to be there, probably late, but could you please go to the meeting first and get it started? So I walk into the meeting, and I'm waiting to see 30 people in the community group sitting around the table talking about solutions to problems of crime in their neighborhood. My cop was by the door like this. I said, David, what the hell are you doing? Sir? What the hell are you doing? I'm guarding the meeting, sir. I didn't send you here to guard the meeting, kid. I told you to be part of the meeting. But I never gave him permission to be part of the meeting. I never trained him to be part of the meeting. I never trained cops how to talk to citizens unless it's a confrontational conversation, right? So you tell me, America, what the mission is of policing, and then we just got to invest in the resources and the training to have it done. Cops will do whatever you want them to do. They just have to know what it is. And don't change the rules during a bad day. Because it looks bad on camera. Don't throw them under the bus. I do expert witness work, I put cops in jail who deserve to go to jail. I have kept cops out of jail who were charged because police chiefs decided they were going to go with the narrative that was in the news and they didn't want to have ethics and guts and stand by and have a bad news sucker. Don't pull up the right money. But I have phone a friend on this one. I have my thoughts, I have my ideas. I love what you said about police can't just learn how they train and do things policing themselves. It's got to be, as Sir Robert Peel said, the police of the community of the police. How do we get other voices? How many law enforcement officers, current law enforcement officials in this room? You work for law enforcement agencies. Currently law enforcement? Where you at? That's yes. Former or current?
I flash back.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
All right, so we got one member of law enforcement, current law enforcement in this room, right? How many former law enforcement do we have in the room? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. And I'm a better cop having been a chief, right? Why do we have cops in this room? And this is a knock on the organization, right? This is a knock on what we did. This is a goal for down the road. Because these conversations that we're having, the voices that I heard this morning, the scientific research that we need to put in action on how we police communities, we really should involve those cops that are tasked with doing that job in that conversation. Because they have a sense for how it works and doesn't. And I can tell you, as a young sergeant, I had the opportunity to go to Harvard, Kennedy School, and learn from voices outside of the police voices. And guess what? I had a different view on policing. But we don't give our cops the opportunity to have these conversations. We don't take them offline for a sabbatical to learn about other ideas about policing than a cop in a squad car. So I encourage you to take what we heard this morning, take the principles we want to develop in law enforcement, and go preach the gospel. Go get law enforcement involved. Go get more community partners involved. I don't think we have any community partners involved, right? In the actual community. We have any former convicted individuals who saved by the DNA Innocence Project here? Anyone we can hear their story of what it's like to have a false confession? I've done 4 projects for the Innocence Project. I've got 4 people out of jail who never should have went to jail. And I think if we can get that message to police officers, they want to do the right thing. They just want to make sure they're doing what we're asking them to do. I went overtime. I didn't talk till I was 3. My mother had me tested to see if I was mute. Now she says they can't shut me up. So with that, any questions, conversations, comments, concerns?
I do have a question since somebody else is raising their hand. A lot of focus today, and a lot of what I'm seeing lately, there's an obvious disconnect between the police and the community, and I can even sense it in some ways in this room. Obviously, police departments need to be more accessible to their public, but the public also has some responsibility, don't you think, in learning more about their government and being part of that change as well. So what's the fix? I know you've mentioned community engagement, and I know we have to enhance police legitimacy and trust so that people actually do have faith in their departments, but in 2022, when most people are disengaged from almost anything anyway, unless it's Netflix, aren't really interested in learning more about the police, which is why I thought your conversation was great, because it gave us a different perspective. So I guess I'm just curious what else you think can be done.
We're going to train cops how to talk to people, right? And that's talk to people in this setting, and talk to people in a homeless shelter. We gotta train cops to be empathetic. I pitched the Austin Police Chief, listen, just a thought, and they did community engagement. So they did 3 weeks community engagement before they came to the academy. Went up to different places, refugee centers and homeless shelters and psychological treatment centers. I wanted to bring all those cops to the police station on Friday night, on holiday weekend, put them in custody Friday at 4 p.m., and then have them stay until Tuesday morning when they get out after one holiday. And I think having cops have a sense of what it's like to put somebody in jail may make that a last option for them, right? I said I would have them working or maybe spending a night or two in the homeless shelter. Not giving out food, but actually sleeping and seeing what it's like to be a homeless person. So I think we've got to learn about what the other side is. So those people not showing up for cops for coffee and ice creams, we have to identify what they are and value their human worth and make sure we're doing things to get their side of the story and engage them in the process. I want to bring gang members into this process. I want to bring homeless into the process. I want to bring community into the process. We got to go out and find it. We got plenty, you know who shows up at community? The community's out, right? We got to go out and empower people. Maybe that's, we're incentivizing people to do all kinds of things. Maybe we get a community advocate street worker who can get, some folks in the community together who aren't necessarily going to show up to a meeting and they can represent. With Zoom and the technology, people can do this stuff on a phone. And we got to retool what we're doing. I think education's key for both sides. If you're an elected official and you're voting on police policies and procedures, I think you should go to the police academy and go through use of force training. I took all my city councilors through use of force training. They killed the victims. They shot each other. They were hard shots. And I said, why didn't you shoot the gun in the hand? Pretty simple.
The taser.
Yep.
Why don't you use a taser?
So I think, I think there is. I think we can do better training in our high schools. What's an ethics class? What's a civics class? Maybe we can talk about what it is. Some of the best programs we've had is taking kids from neighborhoods in need and putting with our cops for 16 weeks with a group called NAP, North American Family Institute. And they just had conversations. And the kids got to understand, and the kids would role play what they felt about the cops would role play what they felt about the kids. And they realized that cops have parents with cancer and kids with Down syndrome, and kids have parents with drug issues, and kids with brothers and sisters with Down syndrome, and they have a lot more in common than they did outside. And I think we've got to build it neighborhood by neighborhood, brick by brick. Yes.
I also wanted to respond to that. Like I'm always trying to talk to cops for my research, and I can't get to them. They won't talk to me. So the us versus them attitude, I can't. Like right now, I'm doing a study of the experiences of for defenders and prosecutors and cops of the new law in California that provides kids who are arrested with a phone call at least or a meeting with a lawyer before they're interrogated. And I'm dying to know how cops are experiencing this law. Is it making things really hard for them? How are they adapting? What's training? Like, I don't know how they're experiencing it, and we can't get access to police for the research, and so we end up representing only the views of defenders. Because that's who we can get access to. That's who will talk to us. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on there.
So we had the same issue. We hired Dr. Anthony Braga to come in as our special advisor to the police department. And Dr. Braga is now the head of Northeastern Criminal Justice, and he was doing a special project on homicides. And I said, whatever Dr. Braga needs on homicides, let him have access to whatever he needs. And I had my homicide commander come up. He's like, yeah, well, this is this and this is that. And I'm like, well, what did Anthony say about it? I'm like, well, I can't understand. This is an investigative file. I said, oh, Anthony's Corey certified. He's all set. No, well, this is only plus one personnel. I said, who's that? Well, it's investigative file change. Investigative file. I said, okay. Anything Dr. Braga wants, he gets. You understand? And 2 weeks later, Dr. Braga made a request, and the commander of homicide decided, no, I can talk to the chief or the commissioner. I can't talk to Dr. Braga about it. And I said, okay. You're not the investigator. You're no longer in charge of homicide. See you later. Next in the seat, please. Do you have any issues with Dr. Braga? No, sir. Okay, good. And then Anthony was able to get the information. And then Anthony also had to do some proof, right? Anthony did ride-alongs with the cops, and he built trust, and he asked the right questions, and you're like, okay, all right. He seems like he's not going to kill me, and I'm not going to get an I'm going to IAD because I'm doing things wrong. So we had to put a culture that said, we value outside opinions here. And if you don't, you're gone. But then Anthony had to do some work inside to build those relationships, and he did. He worked really hard, and I think he's got some great papers on some of the stuff we did in Boston.
Well, Dan, let me thank you so much
Shut up,
for
right? Yeah.
everything.